see things as they are and not as what they are made to be seen. Honorable Minister Professor G.L. Piris restated the resolve of the government to ensure a lasting peace in this country. As it has been amply demonstrated, the Sri Lanka Army has been heavily involved in reconstruction and resettlement effort in the north. In the next session, we have an opportunity to gain first-hand knowledge on reconstruction and resettlement from an eminent panel headed by Mr. S.B. Divaratna. Now, I respectfully invite Mr. S.B. Divaratna, Major General Mahinda Hathurusinghe, and Major General Kamal Gunaratna to please come to the stage and take your seats. Ladies and gentlemen, the chairperson of the first session is Mr. S.B. Divaratna, and he is the secretary of the Presidential Task Force for Resettlement, Development and Security in the northern province of Sri Lanka. Mr. Divaratna holds a bachelor's degree from University of Kelaniya and a postgraduate diploma in economics and policy planning from the University of Manchester, United Kingdom. He has over 40 years of experience in public service, having joined the Sri Lanka Administrative Service in the year 1971. In public service, he has held a variety of positions such as Commissioner General of Essential Services, Deputy Secretary to the Treasury, Director General National Budget, Additional Secretary in the Ministry of Samurdhi and Youth Affairs, Commissioner General of Cooperative Development and Registrar of Cooperative Societies, etc. Since 2009, he has been rendering a yeoman service as the Secretary of the Presidential Task Force for Resettlement, Development and Security in the Northern Province. He has a wealth of experience to share. And the other two panelists are also senior officers of the Army who have a wealth of experience to share in the field of resettlement and reconstruction. Let me now leave you in their safe hands.
Honorable Minister of External Affairs, Secretary, Minister of Defense, Excellencies, Ambassadors, Heads of Foreign Agencies, Commanders of Sri Lanka Army, Navy, and the Air Force, and the distinguished guests and friends, it is indeed a pleasure and honor to be with you and to address this most distinguished audience on a subject which is most important to our country, the reconstruction and resettlement of the northern province. As you know, Sri Lanka from time to time experienced catastrophes that resulted in the civilians being displaced, but faced those consequences of each one of those bravely and dealt with the ensuing challenges of resettlement and reconstruction. There were many instances of that, but the tsunami that struck in 2004 to our country brought to focus the country's ability to cope with disasters and challenges. Now, the most recent experience, you have been listening to what happened in 2009. The most recent experience, what I would like to be termed a Sri Lankan success story, is what took place in the aftermath of the biggest operations launched by the security forces in May 2009 that ended 30 years armed conflict in the country with the LTT. As you heard, there were nearly 300,000 displaced families after this humanitarian operation, and the challenges that had to be faced by the country are like this: establishment and handling reception centers, administration of vast number of a massive number of IDPs, establishment and management of relief villages called the welfare villages, identification of LTT cadres who were mingling with the who were mingling with the IDPs, and to clear the territory which had been held by the LTT for nearly 3 decades, and implementation of a master plan for immediate resettlement and rehabilitation of the North region. So they were the challenges that we had to face. And having got about 250, more than 300,000 refugees, considering the real security threat, accommodating the IDPs in relief villages were the most efficient and safe option available to the country. Keeping the IDPs in one place, which could provide all basic facilities, was conceptualized as the number of civilians who were fleeing out of the LTT control areas had increased since 2008. So an area called Manic Farm was selected to locate all these relief villages. I don't wish to explain the details as to how we manage these welfare centers, because in his address, Mr. Gotabaya Rajapaksa explained in detail the type of facilities that were available. But if one wants to read the full account of how we managed the facilities that were available in the welfare village, I would invite to read the report that was published by the Presidential Task Force on Sri Lanka's humanitarian efforts, which is available in the Defence website. Now, the next one was, having accommodated them in the welfare centers, the most difficult task was to make immediate arrangement to resettle them, the IDPs, in their place of origin. His Excellency, the President of our country, appointed a Presidential Task Force for Resettlement, Development and Security in the Northern Province under very senior Minister, Honorable Basil Rajapaksa, to immediately work out the program for rapid resettlement and reconstruction of the Northern Province. The mission given to the task force was to formulate a strategic framework for revitalization of the Northern Province and to implement a rapid resettlement program. Now, ladies and gentlemen, this resettlement process that we adopted in Sri Lanka wasn't an ad hoc thing. It was well planned, well focused. And these are the policies. The policy of the resettlement policy envisaged, number one, that the resettlement process is voluntary, not forced resettlement. That the IDP should be resettled in their original places of habitation. Then the process should be dignified and safe in terms of international humanitarian law. That the Sri Lanka Army to be an active partner in the resettlement process, and that it involves informed choice of the displaced family through facilitation of go and see visits. So these were the important elements in the resettlement policy. Then the President, the Presidential Task Force adopted the 3-pronged approach for working out an efficient resettlement program. The approach consisted of, number one, provide relief and humanitarian assistance. You got a lot of information from the previous speakers on this. Number two is to restore basic facilities prior to the resettlement, because most of the basic infrastructure were devastated as a result of this ongoing war, and to establish and to immediately set upon a early recovery process, and finally to develop much needed major infrastructure. These were the approach. These were the elements of the approach that was adopted by the Presidential Task Force. So under this, this approach that we was named as Uturu Vasante, the spring of the northern province. And one of the major elements of this master plan was to launch an 180-day program to facilitate the immediate resettlement process. So objectives of this 180-day program was to identify the priorities through well-coordinated plans, enlisting the support of line ministries and all the external agencies, the UN system, the INGOs who are working in Sri Lanka, to create a conducive environment before the resettlement took place. Then plan out the different phases of resettlement. Now, challenges, what were the challenges that we had to face in our process of resettlement? Number one was demining. Number two was the restoration of basic facilities. I don't wish to elaborate on demining because a sufficient, in his address, Mr. Gotabaya Rajapaksa gave you a full account of the demining operation. I must be thankful to the Sri Lanka Army for taking the leading role, and it was well assisted by the foreign-funded NGOs and INGOs. And one of the most difficult tasks, one of the constraints that we had to face, Sri Lanka did not have any machines for demining, so government had to embark upon the procurement of flail machines from other countries at a huge investment, and we had to airlift them, and 19 of such flail machines, we had to airlift them to do the demining process as quickly as possible. Then the restoration of basic infrastructure. As Mr. Gotabaya Rajapaksa said, we had to appoint teams, separate teams to the district to assess the damage and also find out the funds that are required to do this restoration of basic facilities. There again we had a problem of heavy machinery. We had to import large volume of quantities of machinery from the government of China. We are thankful to the government of China for that generous contribution. And so having done all that, we started the resettlement while the IDPs were in the villages. We took data in respect of all the IDPs as to where they came from, and these particulars were checked, verified by the respective division secretaries and the district secretaries. And the government decided, His Excellency President directive to the PTA was that they must have a better place, they must see a better place when they are resettled. And a resettlement package was planned and designed to cover the most urgent needs of the resettled families. Each and every family was given a resettlement package, which consisted of 1 year dry ration, shelter grant of 25,000 rupees given by UNHCR, land preparation cost of 4,000 per family, the non-food relief items, additional non-food relief items of mosquito nets, jerry cans and etc., hygiene packs, return tool kits, provision of seed paddy, that is for 2 bushels per family for 2 months, for 2 acres, roofing sheets and cement bags. Here, we must be thankful to the government of India for having provided all necessary quantities of roofing sheets at the rate of 12 numbers per family, and also cement bags. Then the next problem that we had to face was the temporary shelters to be put up for this. And as you know, that was a very critical issue, and no government in the world can guarantee or can provide houses to its citizens. It's a very difficult task. But what was possible and what was done by the government was to support them to put up temporary shelters and subsequent repairs, support repairs and construction of semi-permanent houses. Our aim was to develop an economic base of the IDPs from the inception of the resettlement, with the hope that enhancing livelihood activities would enable them to put up their own houses. Then the next phase of our program was the early recovery phase. That was to provide them assistance to recommence their economic activities. And we gave them a lot of facilities, particularly for agriculture, home gardening, inland and lagoon fishing, and various other support services for them to immediately start the paddy cultivation. As you know, the northern province, the main source of livelihood of the people is paddy cultivation. So we had to, there were about 180,000 acres of cultivable paddy lands which were not cultivated, they were abandoned, and we took immediate action to clear all this land with the support of the Sri Lanka Army, and at the moment we have been able to almost 98% of such lands have been cleared. Then having done that, the other element of our resettlement process was the reconstruction process in terms of the reconstruction of infrastructure. The government of Sri Lanka up to now have committed nearly 2.5 billion US dollars for this massive investment of, which includes roads, railway, and supply of electricity, supply of water. It includes all social and economic infrastructure. When you talk about the road network, all provincial, national, and rural roads are being rehabilitated, and the total investment is about 75,000 million rupees. And rehabilitation of the railway network, as Secretary of Defense said, the Government of India has given us the necessary finance to this. It's about 650 million US dollars, and the 4 lines and 3 lines have almost commenced operation, and all these 3 lines will be completed by 2013. Then next is the power supply. As you know, the 2 districts of the northern province did not have power, the electricity, for almost 30 years. That is Kilinochchi and Mullaitivu. And we took immediate action to restore power supply in Mullaitivu and Kilinochchi district. And at the moment, we have been able to supply them more than 30% of electrification to both these districts. And at a heavy investment of 13.2 billion rupees in our currency. Then the water supply. Jaffna Peninsula particularly has been, the biggest problem that they have is the water. And the government undertook various projects to provide and to develop the water services. And there is a major project under the ADB assistant, that is to relieve water problem in Jaffna district. And there are almost 9 projects that have been implemented to provide water and sanitation to the entire districts of the northern region. Then health. As you know, investment for upgrading health services is massive. It's about almost 10 billion rupees. That includes renovation, reconstruction, and equipment. I have no time to explain you the type of work that we did in respect of all the districts. But of all these social infrastructure, I would say the biggest investment is for health sector. And we see the result now. Now, when you take the infant mortality rate, the malnutrition, and the rate that is in northern provinces is almost on par with the Sri Lankan standards. Then education. There are 1,020 schools in the Jaffna, the northern region, and many of them were devastated. They didn't have roofs. And we took immediate action with the support of all these international organizations to rehabilitate the schools. And out of 1,020 schools, 920 schools are now functioning with a student population of 260,587 and a teacher cadre of 13,967. And we give a prominent emphasis to education and health, because that is what the northern people need, not anything else. And the construction of permanent houses. As Mr. Gotabaya Rajapaksa said, we have a program to construct 78,150 houses, of which 27,983 permanent houses have been built. Of course, 20,000 had been were built by the government of Sri Lanka. And we have got a very generous contribution from the government of India to put up 50,000 houses, for which we are grateful to the government of India. Then agriculture and irrigation, as I said, we made a massive investment for that. Having cleared all the abandoned paddy lands, having given them nearly about 500 tractors and all the agriculture equipment that were needed, because all these equipments were destroyed during the humanitarian operation, and we have to provide them with all necessary inputs, which include seed paddy, the fertilizer, for all these 3 seasons. We were able to start the cultivation immediately after 2009 with the 3 seasons, and you see the result now. Now the paddy production of the northern region that was 143,579 metric tons in 2009 and 10, but this season 2010 and 2011 it has been shot up to 212,722 metric tons. That shows the result of the services, the input facilities that was given to the farmers. So we are happy to note that. And as I said, the banks, the state banks and the private banks have already moved into these emerging regions. There are more than 20 banks, both state and the private banks are in operation, and they have been, according to the latest report, they have given more than 5 billion concessionary loans to all these farmer families for various purposes, and that was by far the most promising contribution by the banking sector. And to conclude, I would like to say that what was the driving factors for this success? I say this is success because there are several reasons for this success, for this immediate resettlement program. Number one is the unwavering commitment of His Excellency the President, the leader of our country. And the number two is the astute guidance given by Chairman of the Task Force, Honorable Basil Rajapaksa, who constantly steer and monitor the development, particularly the reconstruction. Then the Yeoman service given by Sri Lanka Army, professional services that were according to the Presidential Task Force by Sri Lanka Army, and also the support given by the donor community. In fact, we had received nearly $437 million from all UN agencies, and we are thankful to all donors for that assistance. And finally, to conclude, I wish to say that the reconstruction of the northern province after more than 3 decades of destruction is indeed a challenging task. Northern province has just emerged from devastation with the hope of transforming into a region of hope and rejuvenation. The government has made an enormous investment, nearly $3.2 billion for rebuilding the northern province. It is observed that the people in the northern province are satisfied with the achievements of the ongoing efforts for reconstruction of the northern province. Sri Lanka, despite many challenges, is in the process of charting a new course to transform the northern region from conflict to stability, and from stability to prosperity. The Presidential Task Force, headed by its Chairman Honorable Basil Rajapaksa, with the Minister of Economic Development, in his spearheading all reconstruction activities, under his guidance and constant supervision, has been instrumental in fulfilling this enormous task. The efforts of the government in rebuilding the northern region are based on the principles embodied in the Mahinda Chintane, the policy statement of His Excellency the President of our country, Honorable His Excellency Mahinda Rajapaksa, the overall policy of His Excellency the President of Sri Lanka. The Mahinda Chintane refers to an integrated society consisting of one country, one law, and the program for the northern development is driven by this concept. We have gained many impressive gains, and we would continue with these gains and try to win the international confidence of the international community, those who are here with us. I am sure, having listened to all this volume of development work, would take this message forward, and Sri Lanka will see that particularly next year there won't be any single person to be resettled, and we will deliver the task that has been given to that we are confronted today. And with this, I would like to conclude my speech. Once again, I must thank to Mr. Gotabe Rajapaksa for inviting me, the Commissioner, the Commander of the Sri Lanka Army for inviting me and giving this opportunity to address such a most distinguished gathering. Thank you very much. I have another task to perform to introduce the next speakers. The next speaker is Major General Mahinda Hathurusinghe, who is the Commander Security Forces in Jaffna. He's a very prominent military officer who has excelled himself in Sri Lanka Army, having been commissioned as an officer cadet in the year 1980. And on being commissioning, he had been posted to the Regiment of Sri Lanka Artillery. And he has acquired an impressive record of military and civil education, most notably the Masters in National Security Administration at National Defense University in Philippines. And he was awarded the most outstanding alumnus award for 2010 by National Defense University of Philippines, Masters in Business Administration at Rajarata University of Sri Lanka, and at the moment he is reading for his PhD and MPhil at the University of Colombo. And he has got a lot of medals and awards, Ranasura Padakkama, and also Deshaputra Medal. And of course, the most impressive one is he got an international award, Gushi International Peace Award 2010, for promoting peace and humanitarian activities by the Gushi Foundation in Manila in Philippines. And he's been the present Security Force Commander in Jaffna Peninsula. He has a lot of information to give you with regard to the development and reconstruction work that is going on in the northern, particularly in Jaffna and Jaffna Peninsula. So I would now invite Major General Mahinda Hathurusinghe.